The jungle of Narrated 4 did not sleep. Even in the thin hours between midnight and dawn, its canopy hissed and whispered like a living machine, alive with predators, spores, and sounds that were not meant for human ears. Trees, miles tall, exhaled clouds of golden mist from their hollow trunks. The air was thick enough to chew, and every step felt like walking through breath. Captain Elias Rourke crouched among the roots of one of those massive trees, his armor mottled with mud and bioluminescent dust. His pulse rifle lay across his knees, half-drained and overheating. The night around him was a constant symphony of distant shrieks, chirping energy vents, and the deep, rhythmic thrum of the planet's own magnetic field. He listened, not with his ears, but with the trained instinct of a man who had spent half his life being hunted. Something above him moved. Not the wind, not the usual sway of vines, but something intentional. The faintest scrape of claw against bark. He knew what that meant. "She's up there," he whispered, voice barely a breath. Still watching. The creature stalking him was no ordinary predator. She was a Verathan, a species built by evolution for war and the hunt. 4 arms, razor claws, vision that saw in ultraviolet and heat spectrums. Her kind could become invisible in the trees, their skin refracting light to mimic the foliage. And she wasn't just one of them. She was a commander, her armor marked with faint bioluminescent blue veins, a sign of rank and kill count. She had been pursuing him for hours. He'd counted 3 ambush attempts already, each one closer than the last. The jungle had swallowed her whole. No sound, no light. Just the faint shimmer of movement that vanished the instant he turned his visor. But Elias Rourke wasn't easy prey. He was the last surviving officer of the Terran Recon Unit Blacklight 3, a team that had crash-landed after their ship was shot down during a scouting mission. The rest of his crew, 9 soldiers, had died in the first 2 hours. 2 were incinerated by plasma fire. 1, Sergeant Hume, had been dragged screaming into the canopy by something that looked like a cross between a jaguar and a machine. Rourke had survived not because he was lucky, but because he had stopped playing defense. He had learned to think like the jungle, and more importantly, he had learned to think like her. He had noticed her rhythm days ago, the way she never attacked from the same direction twice, the pattern in the spacing of her ambushes, even the way she seemed to pause right before she leapt. Every creature, no matter how evolved, had a pattern, and Rourke had spent his entire life finding those. That was humanity's secret weapon. Not strength, not speed, not technology. It was pattern recognition, the ability to turn fear into calculation. He checked the charge on his rail pistol. 2 rounds left. Not much, but enough if he made them count. His HUD blinked red with warnings. Armor breach. Power 12%. Radiation exposure rising. He ignored them. A small burst of static crackled in his comm. "Alpha team status," he whispered. No response. He tried again. "Lena Chen, anyone copy?" Only static. The jungle's electromagnetic storms had fried most of their communications. He was alone. Or so it looked. A few meters away, the roots split open into a natural trench. He moved toward it quietly, rifle raised, heart pounding so slow it almost hurt. His training came back in fragments, every movement precise, deliberate, controlled. He had hunted insurgents through the dunes of Orion 7, had survived the vacuum breaches of the Europa station. But this planet was different. It wasn't chaos. It was order, predatory order. Everything here was designed to feed on something else, and right now he was the something else. A faint shimmer above caught his eye. A ripple, like heat on metal. He turned his visor to thermal. The canopy lit up in a wash of orange. One spot, there. 20 meters up, cold signature flickering through the branches. He exhaled slowly. "Come on," he murmured. "You've been waiting long enough." Above, the Verathan crouched low on the branch, her 4 hands gripping the bark. Her tongue flicked against the air, tasting his scent, iron and ozone. She had followed him across 2 kilometers of lethal terrain, through storms and radiation, and now she could feel his weakness. Humans burned bright in infrared, fragile, warm things that bled easy. She extended her lower arms, unlocking the folded spear from her back. The weapon shimmered with green plasma. Her kind never missed, but Rourke had already stepped into position beneath her. He wasn't looking up. He didn't need to. He knew the moment she'd leap. He'd studied her movements like a predator studies prey. Every pause, every breath, she jumped. It was silent, graceful, perfect, until his pistol fired. The rail slug tore through bark and air, followed by a white-hot explosion of sparks. The tree shuddered. The Varathan twisted midair, landing with a metallic hiss, claws skidding against the soil. Rourke was already moving, ducking behind a root, rifle raised again. When their eyes met through the smoke, time slowed. Hers glowed like molten gold, alien and furious. His were calm, human calm, that cold steadiness that came not from peace, but from exhaustion. She bared her fangs. "You knew." "Of course I did," Rourke said, voice steady. "You climb trees to strike," he aimed. "But humans? We wait below," he fired again. The slug clipped her shoulder, ripping through her armor. She screamed, not in pain, but in surprise. Blood, black and metallic, splattered the leaves. She charged. Rourke rolled aside, grabbed his combat knife, and met her mid-swing. Her staff cut a line across his chest plate, throwing sparks. His blade stabbed upward, slicing through the tendons in her lower arm. She retaliated instantly, slamming him back against a tree. The impact cracked his visor. "Primitive!" she hissed, all four arms striking. "You fight without elegance, without code!" "Yeah," he coughed, blood in his mouth. "We call it surviving." She swung again, claws flashing. He ducked, twisted, and jammed his knife under the joint of her armor. It sank deep. The Varathan shrieked, stumbled back. For the first time, he saw fear flicker in her golden eyes. Not fear of death, but confusion. How could something so clumsy, so inferior, still be alive? That was when the jungle itself seemed to exhale. The noises stopped, no insects, no wind. Only silence. Rourke froze. He knew that silence. It meant something else was coming. The Varathan's head snapped toward the distance. A sound like a rumbling growl echoed through the trees. Mechanical, not organic. She hissed something in her language. Words Rourke didn't understand, but instinctively knew meant reinforcements. Her kind had found her. He looked up through the smoke, and in the red haze of the sky, he could see faint blue shapes flickering between the trees. More Varathan, dozens of them, cloaked and moving fast. He gritted his teeth. "Guess you called friends." She glared, breathing raggedly, her wounded arm twitching. "You are cornered, human. You die now." But Rourke smiled. That small, terrible smile humans made when they were already 2 steps ahead. He tapped the side of his helmet, switching to a secondary channel. Static crackled. Then, "Captain, this is Voss! We've got your signal! Say position!" He allowed himself a single breath of relief. "Tree Cluster 9, northern slope." "Bring the heat, copy that." "Hold tight!" the Varathan hissed, realizing too late. She spun, searching for the sound, but it was already upon them. A flash of blue light cut through the canopy. Plasma bolts rained down, shredding leaves and bark. Human reinforcements, Alpha Team, stormed through the jungle, rifles blazing, armor glinting. The Varathan commander screeched, retreating up the trees with astonishing speed. Her invisibility cloak flickered back online as she vanished into the canopy, but Rourke didn't chase. He stood among the roots, chest heaving, armor sparking, and watched the dark leaves above swallow her whole again. "Captain, you good?" Sergeant Lena Voss called, sliding beside him, rifle smoking, still breathing. He said, "She's alive. She'll come back. Then we'll finish it next time." He shook his head. "No, she's not just a hunter. She's learning me. She'll come smarter, faster," Voss frowned. "So what's the plan?" He looked up into the trees where the shadows shimmered faintly. "Watching. Always watching. The plan," Rourke said, loading his last rail round, "is to make her realize she's already the hunted." The jungle wind carried his words upward, through the branches, toward where she crouched in silence. Her blood still dripped from her armor. Her claws flexed and her mandibles clicked in fury. She had thought of humans as prey, small, emotional, predictable. But the human below had waited, studied, and struck with impossible precision. That should have been her instinct. And yet, she had been the one bleeding. As she melted back into the canopy, disappearing into the shifting red mist, one thought echoed through her mind, a thought no Varathan hunter had ever considered before. Perhaps the prey that waits is not prey at all. The first hunt on Narrated 4 had begun. But the balance between predator and prey had already shifted, and in that shift, the jungle itself seemed to hold its breath, because somewhere deep in its burning roots, something ancient and human had awakened, the will to survive, the will to win. The night on Narrated 4 burned in streaks of blue and orange, a sky lit by plasma fire and lightning that crawled sideways across the clouds. The ground was a maze of roots and ash. Every breath tasted like metal. Captain Elias Rourke and his surviving team, Sergeant Lena Voss, Corporal Chen, and Private Harris, moved through the infernal jungle like ghosts, every step measured. Their visors glowed faintly in the dark, cutting through the mist. Behind them, their trail was littered with scorch marks and alien blood. The Varathan had regrouped. The hunt had become war. The humans' drop ship lay half buried in the distance, its hull melted, a black skeleton against the burning trees. That was where they had to go. Inside it was their last chance, supplies, data, and the EMP shell codenamed Heartpiercer. Rourke stopped, signaling for silence. Something shifted above them. A faint ripple among the leaves, a disturbance in the red mist. He raised a hand. Down. The squad dropped instantly. 3 seconds later, a spear of green plasma sliced through where they'd been standing, cutting a tree in half. The air shimmered, and a Varathan ambusher uncloaked, dropping from the canopy in a blur of silver limbs and claws. Rourke didn't hesitate. One shot, clean, controlled. The rail slug hit the creature mid-leap, sending it spinning into the dirt. The others didn't scream or rush. They were soldiers, not prey. They adjusted. Contact confirmed, Rourke muttered. We've got company. The jungle exploded with motion. From every direction, Varathan hunters leapt through the branches, 8, 9, maybe more, flickering in and out of view like ghosts. Spread formation, Rourke ordered. Use the trees as cover. Fire and move. Voss launched a flare into the canopy. The night turned into daylight for a heartbeat. Shadows stretched, predators froze, and the humans fired. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, railgun slugs shattered bark, grenades boomed in blossoms of blue fire. The Varathan were fast, moving like wind, but humans fought dirty. They laid traps, used terrain, forced their enemy into chaos. Chen used a sticky mine launcher to rig routes with explosives. When 3 Varathan dropped onto them, the mines detonated. Shrapnel shredded the air, turning hunters into smoke. 2 down. Chen shouted. Rourke didn't answer. He was focused on the sound behind the noise, the gaps between attacks. There was a pattern forming again. The alien commander was controlling them remotely, guiding their strikes, adapting to his tactics in real time. He could feel her mind in the rhythm of their movements. He ducked behind a fallen trunk and switched his visor to electromagnetic mode. The world became lines of blue static, and there she was, faintly outlined, 20 meters away, her armor glowing faintly through the interference. Rourke smirked. You're not as hidden as you think, sweetheart. He grabbed a smoke canister and tossed it into the air. It exploded in a cloud of phosphorescent mist that clung to the Varathan cloaks like dust. For the first time, the aliens were visible. Light 'em up! The humans opened fire. Blue plasma and white slugs tore through the jungle. 2 Varathan went down immediately. The rest screamed in fury, diving behind roots and trunks, returning fire in precise bursts. A green spear beam cut through Rourke's shoulder guard, spinning him sideways. Pain flashed white-hot, but he stayed upright. Voss ran past him, covering his flank. You're hit! Keep firing, he barked. We don't stop! Above them, the alien commander dropped from the branches like a living storm. She landed with a hiss, her 4 arms spinning her plasma staff in a blur. She was taller than before, her armor fully expanded, her movements faster, sharper. She swung at Voss first. The human ducked barely in time, the plasma slicing through a chunk of her helmet. Chen reacted instantly, throwing a thermal grenade. It detonated near her leg, scorching the ground and forcing her to leap back. But she wasn't alone. 4 more Varathan dropped beside her. They moved like one organism, their tactics perfect, their communication silent. "Fall back," Rourke shouted. "Toward the ridge! We're being boxed in!" The humans fired and retreated step by step, using smoke and grenades to buy distance. The jungle thundered with energy. Trees exploded, their molten sap turning to fireballs. By the time they reached the ridge, they were down to half their ammo. Chen's armor was cracked open. Voss had a burned arm. Harris limped, bleeding from a claw strike. But they were alive, and the aliens were slowing down. Rourke crouched beside a fallen log, breathing hard. "They want us alive," he muttered. "They're hurting us, not killing outright." "Why?" Voss asked, panting. He loaded a fresh magazine. "Because their commander thinks she can learn something. She's adapting, copying us." Then we stopped teaching. Rourke looked up the ridge, where lightning split the horizon and the wreck of their ship gleamed faintly in the distance. That's the plan. The battle turned savage as they climbed. The jungle narrowed, roots giving way to metallic stone. The trees here were hollow, filled with veins of crystal that hummed underfoot. The Varathan were still out there, shadowy shapes weaving between the trunks, their reflections warping in the mist. The humans set traps as they moved. Claymore charges disguised under roots. Monofilament tripwires stretched across pathways. One by one, alien hunters triggered them. The explosions echoed up the ridge, painting the mist orange. But the commander didn't slow. She moved above them now, parallel to Rourke's path, studying him. Every time he ducked behind cover, she repositioned. Every time he flanked, she predicted. It was like fighting a reflection that learned faster than it should. Rourke stopped beside a rusted drop beacon half buried in the mud. He activated its power cell, then stripped the casing to expose its field generator. "Captain?" Voss asked. He grinned grimly. "They want us boxed in? Fine. Let's give them a box." He planted the beacon and rewired it. The generator began to hum, a soft pulse that would distort their enemies' cloaks within 30 meters. The next Varathan wave arrived silently. 10 of them, surrounding the ridge. Rourke waited. Then he triggered the beacon. A blast of electromagnetic energy rippled outward. Every Varathan cloak glitched, flaring into visibility. Their armor shimmered with static, their movements suddenly clumsy. "Now!" Rourke roared. The humans unleashed everything they had. Rifles roared. Explosives lit the air. The aliens fought savagely, but without surprise. And for the first time, the advantage flipped. 2 fell instantly. 3 more were shredded by crossfire. The remaining 5 tried to retreat, but humans didn't let predators retreat. Rourke lunged forward, grabbed one by the throat, and slammed it into the dirt. The alien screamed in a piercing, clicking cry. He ended it with one brutal strike from his knife. The jungle grew quiet again. Smoke drifted upward through the trees. "Status?" he asked, scanning. "Alive," Chen replied. "Barely." Rourke's visor pinged faintly, an incoming signal. Faint, distorted, but human. "Command link established." A robotic voice crackled through. "This is Terran Command. Reinforcements inbound. ETA, 4 hours. Hold position, Captain, 4 hours." It might as well have been forever. Rourke cut the channel. "We hold here," he said simply. "No more running." Voss nodded grimly. "She's still out there." He looked toward the distant canopy, where the alien commander's faint shimmer moved between trees, watching, calculating. "I know," he said. "She's not giving up. But she's bleeding. That means she's scared. Scared of us?" Harris muttered, clutching his side. Rourke looked him dead in the eye. "They always are. Once they realize humans don't break." As the night deepened, the squad dug in. They built a makeshift perimeter using wrecked drone shells, embedded motion mines, and an improvised plasma coil for defense. Above them, the alien ship's lights streaked across the sky, searching. Rourke sat beside the fireless glow of a battery cell, cleaning his knife. His armor was cracked, his shoulder bleeding, but his mind was sharp. He watched the flames reflecting in the puddles, thinking of the first moment he saw this world. From orbit, it had looked beautiful, almost peaceful. Now it was a war zone. He didn't hate it, he respected it. Because Narrated 4 didn't care who you were. It didn't care about rank, technology, or power. It only respected one thing: who could adapt, and humans were built for adaptation. He looked at his team, all battered and silent, still alive despite everything. "This isn't their jungle anymore," he said quietly. "It's ours." Then the jungle answered, a sound, a deep humming roar from somewhere far to the north. Not animal, not mechanical, something between both. Rourke stood, scanning the horizon. In the distance, flashes of light cut through the canopy. "Captain," Chen said, voice shaking, "tell me that's our evac." It wasn't. A shape broke through the mist. A Varathan heavy crawler, a six-legged siege beast, half biological, half machine. Its body glowed with molten lines, its back bristling with plasma turrets. It moved like a living fortress. The alien commander had escalated. She wasn't sending hunters anymore. She was bringing an army. Rourke's lips thinned. "They're done playing." Voss checked her rifle. "Then so are we." The humans fell into formation. The crawler advanced, flattening trees in its path. Its roar vibrated through the soil, shaking the ridge. Rourke's comm pinged, signal from the wreck. The EMP shell was still there. If they could reach it, they might end this battle in one strike. He pointed toward the ship's silhouette beyond the crawler. "That's our target. Sir, that thing's a fortress," Chen shouted. "Then we break fortresses the old-fashioned way," Rourke said, locking in a fresh clip. "With fire." He gave one last look toward the tree line, where the Varathan commander watched from the shadows. "Come on, then," he whispered. "Let's see who's the real hunter now." Then he raised his rifle and led his team straight into the inferno. The dawn on Narrated 4 came not with light, but with fire. A crimson sun struggled to break through a canopy already aflame. Smoke rolled like oceans, rising in black waves. The air shimmered with heat. Trees fell like towers, their massive trunks groaning as they collapsed, and cutting through it all was the sound of war, the low, endless hum of orbital bombardment. Above the burning jungle, the Varathan flagship Karin hung in low orbit, its crescent hull glowing blue. Every few seconds, it opened fire, sending plasma lances screaming toward the planet's surface. The jungle melted beneath each strike. For Captain Elias Rourke and his 3 surviving soldiers, it was hell and home. They had reached what was left of their dropship, a twisted carcass of metal buried in the ridge, its nose crushed, its tail ripped apart by vines and gravity. Sparks leapt from shattered panels. The smell of burned fuel filled the air, but inside that wreck lay their last hope. The Heart-Piercer, an EMP warhead strong enough to fry a ship in orbit. Rourke stood before the open hatch, visor dim, rifle low. His armor was smeared with ash and blood. He had barely slept in 36 hours. The jungle had given him scars, burns, and nightmares, but it hadn't taken his resolve. Voss crouched beside the warhead, prying open its casing with trembling hands. "Cap, this thing's intact, but its power relay's fried." "How bad?" "We can charge it, but the uplink antenna's dead. Without a signal boost, it won't reach orbit." Rourke exhaled slowly. He already knew what that meant. Someone would have to climb the communications tower, the one half collapsed in the middle of the jungle, and manually calibrate the blast transmission. A death sentence in broad daylight. "Sir," Chen said, limping closer, "we can't make that climb under bombardment." "That tower's exposed as hell." Rourke didn't answer. He just looked out at the sky. The Karin was repositioning, preparing another strike. The shadows of its orbiting drones swept across the burning trees like vultures. "Doesn't matter," he said finally. "We don't have time to wait. Reinforcements are still hours away." Voss looked up, her face streaked with grime. "You're thinking of doing it yourself, aren't you?" Rourke gave her a tired smile. "I started this mess. Might as well finish it." "No," Chen protested. "You can't." "Stow it," Rourke cut in, his voice calm but final. "Prep the warhead. Sync the detonation to my signal." Then he slung his rifle, reloaded his last 2 rail slugs, and turned toward the jungle. The tower loomed half a kilometer away, a broken skeleton of steel wrapped in vines, its top vanishing into smoke. Plasma fire flashed in the distance, every blast shaking the ground. Rourke moved fast, silent, every footstep echoing off roots still slick with rain. His visor fed him ghost readings, faint movements, false heat signatures. The jungle was alive, but it was dying. Even the creatures that had once stalked the canopy were fleeing. Only one presence remained. He could feel her, the Varathan commander. She was hunting him again. It wasn't the same as before. The air felt charged, thick with tension. She wasn't attacking recklessly now. She was waiting, watching, learning. Every once in a while, Rourke would catch a glimpse. A faint shimmer behind the mist, a flash of gold eyes above the smoke. Always at the edge of sight. He pressed on. Lightning struck a nearby tree, splitting it open. The trunk exploded in a burst of sap and flame, showering sparks across the ground. Rourke didn't flinch. His focus was on the tower ahead. He reached its base and stared upward. It was barely standing, a half-melted, swaying with the wind. The climb would be suicide. He began anyway. As Rourke climbed, the world below turned into chaos. Voss and Chen were fortifying the wreck, setting up defensive charges. Through the comm, static-choked voices crackled. "Cap, movement north. We've got multiple heat signatures, fast ones." "Copy," Rourke said, climbing faster. "Hold them off as long as you can." He was 20 meters up when the first plasma bolt struck the base of the tower. The structure shuddered, groaning. The Varathan had arrived. Through the smoke, a dozen of them advanced in formation, sleek, lethal, glowing faintly under the red dawn. At their head was the commander, her armor scorched, but her movements fluid, confident. She looked up. She could see him. Rourke kept climbing. His gloves sparked as he gripped hot metal. Sweat and blood dripped down his face. "Keep her busy, Voss. Working on it." Gunfire erupted below, the sharp rhythm of human defiance. Voss and Chen opened up with everything they had. The jungle lit with blue flashes, grenades popping like thunder. Rourke reached the mid-level platform, panting. His shoulder ached from the climb. He could see the comm dish above, tilted and cracked, the control panel still flickering with faint light. He pried open the panel, reconnecting power lines with trembling fingers. "Sparks flew. Come on, you old bastard," he muttered. "Talk to me." The screen glowed faintly. Manual override available. That was all he needed. He tapped into the Heart Piercer's guidance system and began aligning the signal beam. Below, the Varathan commander roared a command. Her troops surged forward through the smoke. Voss's gun jammed. Chen was down to his last clip. They were outnumbered 10-1, but they didn't break. Every explosion was another heartbeat bought. Every scream another second for Rourke to finish his work. He typed the last command. The console beeped, link established. He smiled grimly. "We're in business." Then the tower shook violently. A plasma bolt hit one of the lower supports, tearing it apart. The entire structure swayed, metal groaning. Rourke nearly lost his footing, grabbing a cable just in time. He looked down and saw her. The Varathan commander was climbing the tower. Fast, her forearms moving like pistons, claws cutting through steel. Her eyes locked onto his, burning with fury and something else. Respect, maybe. Rourke raised his pistol and fired. The slug tore past her, missing by inches. She leapt sideways, crawling along the tower's outer struts like a spider. He climbed higher. The comm tower was collapsing piece by piece. Fire rolled up the sides. The air was molten. But he didn't stop. He reached the top, one last platform swaying hundreds of meters above the burning world. From here, he could see everything. The wrecked dropship, the crawling jungle, the dark horizon, and above it all, the Karen, glowing like a false moon. He connected the uplink and keyed his mic. "Voss, Chen, signals live. Fire the Heart Piercer on my mark." No reply. "Just static and gunfire." He clenched his jaw. "Fine. I'll do it myself. He reached for the trigger code, and she struck. The Varathan commander slammed into him from behind, claws scraping against his armor. The impact sent them both sprawling across the platform. The metal buckled under their weight. She pinned him down, mandibles bared, plasma blade extending from her wrist. "You destroy your own world," she hissed. "Why fight for ashes?" Rourke grinned through blood. "Because there are ashes," he twisted, using his last rail slug. The shot went through her shoulder, blowing out circuitry and armor. She screamed, staggering. The platform beneath them cracked, one corner breaking loose. The tower tilted. He pushed himself up, every bone screaming in protest. The console flickered beside him, still online. The EMP countdown blinked, awaiting final confirmation. She lunged again, slashing through the control wires, nearly cutting the link. Sparks rained around them. Rourke grabbed a metal pipe and swung. The hit connected with her jaw, sending her stumbling backward. "You don't get to win," he said, voice hoarse. "Not today." She looked at him, bleeding, shaking, but still standing, and for the first time her expression shifted. "Not rage, recognition. You are a true hunter," she whispered. He pressed the trigger. "Damn right." The heart-piercer fired. A beam of white-blue energy shot skyward, splitting the clouds. The air rippled, time itself seeming to freeze. Then came the blast. The EMP wave tore through the atmosphere, ripping into the Varathan flagship above. The Karen flickered, its shields collapsing in bursts of light. Its engines sputtered, then died. From orbit it began to fall, a silent, burning comet. Rourke barely had time to react before the shockwave hit. The tower exploded outward, sending metal shards in all directions. He was thrown clear, falling through smoke and flame. He hit the canopy hard, crashing through branches, the world spinning. He felt bones crack, air vanish, darkness swallowing him whole. When Rourke woke, the sky was no longer blue. It was fire. The Karen was descending, a wounded god, dragging a streak of molten debris behind it. The sound of its engines dying was like thunder. He tried to move. Every muscle screamed. His visor was shattered, his armor cracked open. He turned his head and saw her, the Varathan commander, half buried under a fallen trunk, her armor smoking. She was alive, barely. Her golden eyes met his. "You destroyed us!" He coughed blood, forcing himself upright. "No. You destroyed yourself the moment you thought humans were prey." Above them, the Varathan ship entered the atmosphere, tearing apart piece by piece. Its burning fragments lit up the jungle like a second dawn. The explosion that followed was silent at first, just a bloom of white. Expanding across the horizon, then the sound came. Rolling like a mountain falling, the shockwave flattened everything for miles. Rourke threw himself behind a root, shielding his face. The blast tore through the jungle, ripping trees apart, erasing the past night's battlefield. When it passed, silence returned. Real silence. No engines, no screams. Just wind and ash. Rourke lay still, staring at the sky. The Karen was gone. Hours later, he was still alive. Barely. He limped back toward the wreck site, finding what was left of Voss and Chen. They were battered but breathing. "You did it," Voss whispered, eyes wide as she looked at the burning horizon. Rourke sat down beside her, exhausted beyond measure. "We did it," he corrected softly. Above them, streaks of light appeared, Terran reinforcements entering orbit. Humanity had returned. He leaned back against the ruins, watching the smoke drift upward. Somewhere in the distance, the jungle crackled with new life, green shoots pushing through ash. For the first time since the crash, he let himself close his eyes. They had come to this planet as prey. But the moment the sky burned, everything changed. Because humanity had once again proven the truth that the galaxy never seemed to learn. You can hunt a human, but if you give them a reason to fight, you'll never walk away alive. The rain came 3 days after the sky burned. It wasn't gentle. It fell in black sheets thick with soot, turning the ground to mud and ash. Lightning danced across the horizon, illuminating what remained of the Varathan flagship. The Karen was no longer a ship. just a mountain of twisted metal embedded into the jungle's heart. Still glowing red from re-entry, Captain Elias Rourke stood at its edge, cloak whipping in the wind, staring at the wreck. His armor was cracked, one shoulder plate gone, his rifle burnt out. But his eyes, they were alive. He had seen humanity lose a dozen worlds. He'd seen civilians turn to vapor, soldiers devoured by silence. But this time, this small toxic world, they had won. And somehow that mattered more than anything. Voss limped up beside him, one arm in a sling, mud streaking her face. "Command finally got through," she said. "Fleet's inbound. They'll start recovery in 6 hours." Rourke nodded slowly. "About damn time." Chen followed, his leg wrapped in gauze, carrying what looked like a broken drone core. "We found survivors in the wreck, Varathan pods. Half their warriors are dead, the rest trapped in cryostasis. Any sign of the commander?" Rourke asked. Chen hesitated. "Not yet, but the wreck's deep. Could be buried under a few hundred tons of hull." Rourke didn't answer right away. He just kept looking at the smoking crater. He didn't want her to die unseen. Not like this. Not after what they'd both done. The Terran recovery fleet arrived in silence, a dozen gray warships gliding through the black clouds like ghosts. Drop pods descended, spraying vapor as they touched down. Marines in fresh armor spread out across the jungle, scanning, securing, salvaging. Humanity was reclaiming what had been taken, but Rourke couldn't rest. He led a small squad into the Karen's remains, navigating twisted corridors of melted alloy and shattered alien tech. The ship was massive, even in ruin. Every hallway pulsed faintly with dying energy. Varathan corpses lay everywhere, their glassy armor cracked open, their once perfect features frozen in expressions of disbelief. Rourke's boots splashed through black water. The deeper they went, the quieter it became. Finally, they reached the core chamber, a cavernous dome that once powered the entire flagship. The reactor was silent, its light gone. But in the corner of that darkness, something moved. Rourke raised his weapon. From the shadows, the Varathan commander emerged. Her armor was shattered, her left arm missing, her breathing ragged. She was dying, but still standing. Her eyes met his. No hate now, no fury. Just exhaustion. "You live," she rasped, her voice distorted by the broken translator. "Impossible." Rourke lowered his rifle. "You're hard to kill yourself." She took a slow step toward him, her movements weak but graceful. "You destroyed my ship. My army, for what?" "For every colony you burned," he said. "For every child you took?" She smiled faintly. Or maybe that was just pain. "You fight like beasts. No strategy. No mercy. Just survival." Rourke's jaw tightened. "We didn't start this war. You came to hunt. We just made sure the prey bit back." Silence. Then she sank to one knee, coughing black blood. The faint light of the dying reactor reflected in her eyes. Rourke stepped closer, kneeling beside her. "You could have left when you saw the heart piercer charging. You knew what was coming." "I stayed," she whispered, "because you reminded me what it meant to fight for something beyond victory." Her claws trembled as she reached out, touching the ground beside her. A human gesture, awkward, unfamiliar. "You are not prey," she said. "Perhaps none of you ever were." Her body went still. Rourke stayed there for a long time, the weight of her words pressing down heavier than the wreck itself. When he finally stood, he gave her a soldier's nod. No triumph, no mockery. "Just acknowledgement. Rest," he said quietly. "You earned that much." By nightfall, the jungle was glowing. Fires had faded into embers, and new growth was already sprouting through the ash. The planet was healing, faster than expected. Rourke stood with Voss and Chen near a makeshift camp. Dozens of human Marines moved through the clearing, setting up relay towers, gathering data, marking the site for evacuation. "Fleet Command wants us back on the Resolute for debrief," Voss said. "They're calling it the Neuraxis Stand. Gonna make a whole damn speech about it." Rourke gave a small laugh, dry and tired. "Yeah, bet they will," Chen smirked. "You should give the speech, Cap." Rourke shook his head. No, let them remember the ones who didn't make it. That's speech enough. He looked at the jungle again, or what remained of it. The trees were blackened, the soil scarred. But beneath the ash, life shimmered. Strange bioluminescent fungi glowed faintly where roots once were. It wasn't dead. It was changing. Funny, he said quietly. We came here to survive. Ended up giving this place a chance to live again. Voss tilted her head. You think we'll ever stop fighting? Rourke didn't answer immediately. His gaze drifted toward the stars, where debris from the Charon still burned in orbit, fading like dying meteors. No, he said at last, but maybe that's what keeps us human. We fight not because we love war, but because we refuse to be erased. 2 weeks later, the Terran flagship Resolute departed Narrated 4 from orbit. The planet looked peaceful, green patches returning, the great crater cooling into a shimmering lake. Rourke stood on the observation deck, the glass stretching out into infinity. Around him, other officers spoke softly, trading reports. But his eyes were on the world below. "Captain!" came a voice from behind him. Admiral Yara, tall, silver-haired, eyes like flint. "Your report says the Varathan commander perished in the crash." "She did," Rourke replied. "Did she say anything before she died?" He hesitated. "Yes," the Admiral waited. "She said, 'Maybe we were never prey to begin with.'" The Admiral studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Good. The galaxy needs to remember that." She walked away, leaving him alone with the stars. Later that night, Rourke sat in his quarters, the hum of the ship a low lullaby. His armor lay dismantled beside him, every plate dented and scorched. He turned one of the fragments over in his hands, the side still marked with alien scratches, where the commander's claws had struck him. He thought about her, about the fight, about the look in her eyes before the end. War wasn't about enemies, he realized. Not really. It was about the thin, fragile line between understanding and annihilation. He recorded a log, his voice steady but quiet. Narrated R4 was supposed to be a loss. A dead world, but we stood our ground. The Varathan learned that humanity doesn't run, even when cornered. We fight with everything we have, not for conquest, but for the right to exist. They thought we were the hunted. They were wrong. He closed the log and leaned back, eyes drifting toward the viewport. Outside, the stars glimmered faintly, infinite and cold. But to him, they looked like embers, sparks of something that refused to die. Weeks passed. The news spread across human space, the Battle of Narrated. A Terran captain, a handful of soldiers, a fallen alien warship. Entire colonies cheered. Posters went up. Children played games in the streets, pretending to be soldiers, fighting off invisible hunters. But those who had been there, those who had seen the fire, they remembered differently. They remembered the silence before the storm, the way the jungle burned, the sound of one man's breath echoing inside a broken helmet. They remembered that courage wasn't loud. It was just refusing to stop breathing when everything told you to give up. Months later, on another world, a lush colony deep in the frontier, Rourke walked through a forest that reminded him of Narrated. The trees were taller here, their leaves gold instead of green. Birds sang instead of artillery. He paused beneath a massive branch, sunlight filtering through. For a moment he thought he saw movement above, a shimmer of gold, a shadow leaping silently through the canopy. He smiled faintly. "Still watching, huh?" he murmured. Maybe it was just wind. Maybe not, but something in him knew. The galaxy wasn't done testing humanity. And somewhere out there, the Varathan weren't gone. They were wounded, scattered, learning from defeat. He adjusted the strap of his pack and kept walking, because if they came again, humanity would be ready, not as prey. Not as victims, but as hunters who had survived the hunt. The camera of memory pulls back. Rourke small beneath the golden canopy, the light behind him like a halo of fire. The jungle breathed.